Hello there, gentle wanderer of time, and welcome to this peaceful journey into the past. Before we step through the marble-lined streets of ancient Pompeii on that fateful day in 79 AD, I want to extend a warm greeting to you, dear listener. Whether you're settling into bed after a long day, or simply seeking a moment of calm reflection, I'm so grateful you've chosen to join me tonight. If you'd like, please feel free to share in the comments where in the world you're listening from and what draws you to these ancient stories of courage and resilience. There's something magical about knowing we're all connected across time and space, sharing these moments with the people of Pompeii who lived nearly 2,000 years ago. If you find comfort in these historical journeys, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to join our growing community of fellow time travelers. But for now, let the stresses of today fade away as we walk together through the bustling streets of one of Rome's most vibrant cities. Close your eyes if you wish, and let your imagination carry you back. Back to August 24th, in the year 79 AD. The sun is just beginning to rise over the Bay of Naples, casting golden light across red-tiled roofs and marble columns. The air is warm and sweet, with the scent of baking bread and blooming gardens. Mount Vesuvius looms peacefully in the distance, its slopes green with vineyards and olive groves. The people of Pompeii have no idea that this will be their last dawn. As the first pale light of dawn creeps across the red-tiled roofs of Pompeii, Marcus Lucretius Fronto stirs on his simple wooden bed. The baker stretches and immediately notices something wrong. The air feels thick as honey, weighted with an oppressive heat that has nothing to do with the rising sun. Marcus has lived all his 34 years in this house on the Via dell'Abbondanza, inherited from his father and grandfather before him. He knows every stone, every beam, every whisper of wind that normally flows through these modest rooms. But today, something fundamental has changed. The floor beneath his bare feet radiates warmth that penetrates even his thick, calloused soles. Through the narrow window, Mount Vesuvius looms in the distance, its familiar green slopes peaceful in the morning light. How could he know that this beneficent mountain, provider of the rich volcanic soil that feeds their prosperity, is about to reclaim its ancient power with unimaginable violence? The heat came early today, Livia murmurs as she hands him a cup of pasca, that mixture of water and vinegar that serves as the common man's breakfast drink. Her dark eyes show concern. In 15 years of marriage, she's learned to read the subtle signs that something troubles her husband. They step together into their small atrium, where the impluvium catches rainwater from the opening above. Usually this pool reflects the brightening sky like a mirror to the heavens. Today, the water shivers with tiny ripples, as if stirred by an invisible hand. The household shrine stands in its place of honor, where Marcus pauses to offer prayers to the Lares, the household gods who protect his family. But even this familiar ritual feels different today. The small oil flames seem to burn brighter than usual, and the carved wooden figures appear almost alive in the dancing light. "Did you feel that?" Livia asks suddenly, her hand reaching out to steady herself against the wall. Marcus pauses, every sense alert. For just a moment, the floor beneath their feet seemed to pulse, as if the earth itself drew breath. It passes quickly, but leaves behind an unease that settles in his stomach like cold stone. Outside, the familiar sounds of morning begin, roosters crowing, dogs barking, the distant clatter of cartwheels on stone. But underneath these normal noises runs something else, a tension in the air itself, as if the very atmosphere holds its breath. As Marcus makes his way to his bakery, the streets of Pompeii reveal their first hints of the day's strangeness. The Via dell'Abbondanza, usually bustling with early morning activity, carries an odd undercurrent of unease. Merchants set up their stalls with unusual quiet, and even the children seem subdued as they hurry past on morning errands. The public fountains, those marble masterpieces that bring mountain spring water to every corner of the city, flow with water that feels oddly warm to the touch. Citizens pause to splash their faces and comment in worried whispers about the unusual heat that seems to rise from the very stones beneath their feet. At Salvius's tavern, the Thermopolium owner shakes his head as he arranges his counter displays. "Even the underground storage rooms feel like ovens today," he tells Marcus. "My wine that should be cool as winter morning runs warm as bathwater. Dogs that usually sprawl lazily, in whatever shade they can find, pace restlessly through the streets. Horses whinny nervously in their stables, refusing the grain their masters offer. Even the pigeons that normally roost contentedly on rooftops and in building eaves have taken flight, circling the city in agitated clouds before streaming away toward the north." In his bakery, Marcus discovers that his ovens, which should feel cool after a night without fuel, radiate heat as if they had been burning continuously. The brick walls are warm to the touch, and when he tests the great oven's mouth with his hand, heat flows out like the breath of a sleeping dragon. 27 years I've worked these ovens," mutters his slave Gaius, a loyal Greek whose knowledge of bread-making rivals his master's own. "Never have I felt them burn without fuel, never seen the stones themselves seem to hold fire." The dough they mixed the previous evening has risen more than expected, as if the ambient heat has accelerated the fermentation process. The texture feels different too, more elastic somehow, as if the very wheat responds to invisible changes in the air around them. Marcus begins his morning routine, but each familiar task reveals new strangeness. The water they use for bread making, drawn from the same well that has served his family for generations, tastes different, not bad, but subtly altered with a mineral tang that wasn't there yesterday. As he kneads the dough for the day's first loaves, Marcus finds himself listening for sounds that have no name. The normal rhythms of the awakening city continue, but underneath them runs something else, a deep, almost inaudible humming that seems to come from the earth itself. By the 4th hour after sunrise, the Forum of Pompeii pulses with its usual commercial energy, but today, that energy carries an undercurrent of nervous tension. The great civic center, surrounded by marble colonnades and dominated by temples, serves as the stage where all of the city's dramas unfold. But today's performance has an edge that makes even experienced citizens uneasy. Lucius Caesius Secundus, one of Pompeii's leading citizens and a member of the ruling council, adjusts his pristine white toga as he surveys the scene before him. As a follower of Stoic philosophy, he believes in accepting what cannot be controlled, but today tests even his philosophical composure. The marble paving stones of the Forum radiate heat that penetrates his leather sandals. Merchants conduct their business with uncharacteristic haste, as if eager to complete their transactions and retreat to whatever shelter they can find. Even the lawyers who normally hold court in the basilica's shade seem hurried and distracted. "Have you noticed how still the air has become?" observes Marcus Hulconius Rufus, approaching with the measured steps befitting his position as chief priest of the imperial cult. Even for August, this heat feels unnatural. Indeed, not the slightest breeze stirs the hanging banners or the carefully arranged goods in the market stalls. The air hangs motionless over the Forum like an invisible blanket, thick enough to feel against the skin. Near the Temple of Jupiter, a traveling soothsayer draws small crowds with his dramatic pronouncements about the flight patterns of birds. "The eagles fly alone today," he proclaims, pointing at the sky where solitary raptors circle high above the city. When the king of birds abandons his realm, wise men take heed. Most dismiss him as a harmless fraud, but a few faces in the crowd show genuine concern. In a world where divine intervention shapes daily life, omens and portents carry real weight for those who know how to read them. The fountains throughout the forum, usually cascades of sparkling water, seem to flow less vigorously than usual. The carved dolphins and sea nymphs that normally appear to frolic in the spray now seem oddly subdued, as if even the stone creatures sense the day's strangeness. In the grand villa that houses Lucius Caesius Secundus and his family, the morning unfolds with all the elaborate ceremony befitting their patrician status. But even wealth and luxury cannot shield them from the day's growing strangeness. The house itself is a masterpiece of Roman domestic architecture. Rooms arranged around multiple courtyards, walls decorated with frescoes depicting scenes from Greek mythology, gardens filled with exotic plants from across the empire. Yet today, the beautiful spaces feel oppressive, as if the very air has thickened beyond what marble walls can contain. Claudia, Lucius's wife, moves through their home with growing unease. At 38, she remains beautiful in the classical Roman manner, pale skin carefully protected from the sun, dark hair elaborately arranged with golden pins. But today, even her lightest silk garments feel oppressive against her skin. The flowers in our garden seem to droop despite constant watering, she observes to her chief slave, Fortunata. And listen, do you hear how quiet the birds have become? Their 6-year-old son, Gaius, proves impossible to settle into his usual morning lessons. The child, normally eager for stories and instruction, remains wide-eyed and restless despite his tutor's patient efforts. The ground feels angry today, Mama, young Gaius whispers, with the directness that only children possess. It's warm like fever, and it hums underneath us. From the mouths of children, the ancients say, truth often speaks in ways that adult wisdom fails to recognize. In the villa's kitchen, slaves work with growing difficulty, as the heat becomes almost unbearable. The cooking fires that should provide controlled warmth for food preparation now burn with unusual intensity, requiring constant adjustment to prevent the morning meal from burning. The family's physician, summoned to examine young Gaius's restlessness, finds nothing physically wrong with the child. But the learned Greek observes that many households throughout the city are reporting similar symptoms: restless sleep, nervous energy, an inability to settle into normal routines. Perhaps it is merely the exceptional heat, he suggests diplomatically, but his weathered face shows the concern of someone who has witnessed many strange phenomena during his long career. As the morning progresses, even the villa's elaborate gardens show signs of distress. Flowers that should bloom vibrantly in the summer heat hang their heads despite careful watering. The ornamental fish in the decorative pools swim in agitated circles, occasionally leaping from the water as if trying to escape something in the depths. Most disturbing of all, the household's numerous cats and dogs refuse to enter certain areas of the villa, particularly the rooms closest to the mountain. They pace restlessly through the corridors, whining and looking toward Vesuvius with expressions that seem almost human in their anxiety. As this strange morning draws toward its oppressive noon, only 14 hours remain until Mount Vesuvius awakens from its geological slumber. But for now, Pompeii continues its ancient dance of civilization, unaware that they dance on the very edge of catastrophe. As the sun reaches its merciless zenith above Pompeii, casting harsh shadows that offer precious little relief, the city begins its slow retreat into the blessed coolness of shuttered homes and shaded gardens. The 6th hour has arrived, that sacred time when even the most industrious citizen acknowledges defeat before the crushing heat of a Campanian summer. But today, Even the traditional midday rest provides no escape from the oppressive atmosphere that has settled over the city like a heavy blanket. Marcus Lucretius Fronto returns to his modest home, where Livia has followed the ancient wisdom of Roman housekeeping, every shutter sealed, every door to the garden courtyard thrown wide to encourage what little breeze might stir. The heat grows worse each hour, Livia murmurs, offering him a cup of well-watered wine flavored with mint from their small garden. Her face glistens with perspiration, despite the relative coolness of the house, and her usually perfect hair hangs in damp tendrils around her neck. They settle onto cushioned couches in the atrium, following the sacred Roman tradition of the meridian rest. Around them, the house settles into drowsy silence broken only by the gentle plash of water in the impluvium and the distant murmur of their neighbor's fountain. But rest does not come easily today. The very air seems to press down upon them with an almost physical weight. Marcus finds himself listening intently to sounds that seem somehow wrong. The unusual silence of birds, the restless whinnying of horses in nearby stables, the odd way that even distant sounds seem muffled and strange. "Do you hear that?" Livia asks, suddenly, raising her head from her couch. Marcus listens carefully. Beyond the familiar household sounds, beyond the whisper of fountains and the rustle of leaves in their small garden, there's something else. A deep, almost inaudible rumble, like thunder from an impossibly distant storm. It seems to come not from the sky, but from the earth itself, vibrating through the stone foundations of their home. Perhaps it's carts on the Via dell'Abbondanza, Marcus suggests, but his voice lacks conviction. He knows the sound of cartwheels on stone, and this is something different entirely, something deeper, something that seems to resonate in his very bones. The rumble fades, leaving them both straining to hear it again. When it doesn't return, they exchange uncertain glances and settle back onto their couches. But sleep feels elusive now, chased away by that strange sound and the oppressive weight of the afternoon heat. Throughout Pompeii, similar scenes unfold in houses great and small. Citizens retreat from the punishing heat, seeking refuge in shuttered rooms and shaded gardens. Children nap fitfully on couches, cooled with wet cloths. Slaves fan their masters with palm fronds and peacock feathers, their own discomfort forgotten in service to those they must obey. At the Terme Stabian, Pompeii's grandest public bath complex, the afternoon crowd gathers with unusual desperation. What would normally be a leisurely social ritual has become an urgent necessity, the promise of cool water drawing citizens like desert travelers toward an oasis. But the city's bathhouse reveals its own disturbing secrets. The caldarium, usually the heart of the bathing experience, stands nearly empty as the heated pools have become almost unbearable. Steam rises from their surfaces like the breath of underground dragons, and the few hardy souls who attempt to enter retreat quickly with gasps of shock. In 40 years of maintaining these baths, the bathmaster confides to his assistant, "I've never seen the water this hot without adding extra fuel. The hypocaust system burns as if fed by invisible fires." Indeed, the beautiful mosaic floors depicting Neptune and his marine court radiate such heat that bathers dance from foot to foot, seeking relief on marble benches that offer little comfort. The frigidarium draws the largest crowds, its cold plunge pool offering the only true respite from the crushing atmosphere. Gaius Alaeus Nigidius, Maius, a prominent citizen and frequent patron of the baths, arrives with his small retinue of slaves. As a man who has sponsored gladiatorial games and public works, he carries himself with quiet dignity. But today, even his usual composure shows cracks, as perspiration beads on his patrician brow. This heat would make even Neptune himself seek shelter, he remarks to his companion, the cloth merchant Lucius Vesonius Primus, as they enter the bathhouse's welcoming coolness. Conversations flow in worried whispers about the day's strangeness. Marcus Appidius Sabinus, a wine merchant whose estates sprawl across Vesuvius's fertile slopes, observes that his horses have been restless all day. They pace their stalls and refuse their feed, he tells fellow bathers. Animals often sense storms before we do. But what storms could create such oppressive conditions? The sky remains brilliant blue, unmarked by the clouds that would herald normal weather changes. Instead, the heat seems to rise from the very ground beneath their feet, as if the earth itself has developed a fever. In Pompeii's bustling harbor district, the afternoon brings revelations that challenge everything the maritime community understands about their familiar bay. Ships riding at anchor seem to shimmer in heat that goes beyond normal summer temperatures, their sails hanging limp in air, so still it might be carved from stone. Marcus Holconius, captain of the harbor guard, makes his rounds through streets that feel subtly wrong despite their familiar appearance. The massive stone quays, usually cool to the touch, thanks to their proximity to the sea, now radiate warmth that penetrates his sandal soles. The water level seems higher today, observes one of his younger guards, peering down from the stone walkway. And the color... does it look different to you, sir? Indeed, the Bay of Naples has taken on an odd, oily quality that reflects the afternoon light in disturbing patterns. Occasional bubbles rise to the surface in formations too regular to be natural, and the water temperature feels unusually warm against the harbor walls. Fishing boats report that their usual catch behaves strangely. Fish that normally swim in organized schools now move in frantic, seemingly random patterns. Even the seabirds that usually cry and fight over scraps have fallen into an unnatural quiet, perching motionless on rigging and pier posts. A grain ship captain from Sicily confides his concerns about cargo spoilage. The holds are sweating despite proper ventilation. In 30 years of trading these routes, I've never seen goods react to atmospheric conditions like this. The bronze foundry of Marcus Nigidius Vacula has been forced to shut down entirely. The combination of furnace heat and the oppressive atmosphere has created an environment that no human can endure. Even the bronze seems to resist the hammer today, his chief metalworker observes, examining a half-finished statue. The metal stays soft longer than it should. Outside the city walls, the Gladiator school buzzes with its own form of desperate energy. These warriors, accustomed to facing death as a daily possibility, possess instincts honed by constant proximity to danger, and today, those instincts scream warnings that their rational minds struggle to interpret. Celadus the Thracian, a veteran fighter whose skill with the curved Sika has made him a crowd favorite, stretches his powerful frame in whatever shade he can find. Even his bronze skin, darkened by years under the Mediterranean sun, gleams with perspiration in the oppressive heat. Even in the amphitheaters of Africa, I've never felt heat like this, he tells his training partner Crescens, a young retiarius who fights with net and trident. The very air seems to burn in the lungs. Their trainer, Lucius Annius, surveys his valuable fighters with the eye of a general assessing troops before battle. These men represent significant investments that cannot be squandered on training during dangerous conditions. Light weapons work only, he commands. No heavy armor, no prolonged combat. Even the practiced swords feel twice their weight in this cursed air. The exotic animals, kept for arena spectacles, pace their cages with unprecedented agitation. The great African lion, normally lethargic in summer heat, moves restlessly from side to side, his massive head raised as if scenting something that transcends normal predator instincts. Young Crescens pauses in his network, wiping perspiration from his eyes with the back of his hand. The nets feel twice their weight today, he pants. Even the leather wrappings on the trident grip are slippery with moisture. An older gladiator, a Gallic swordsman named Flamma, whose numerous victories have earned him the wooden sword of freedom, though he chooses to continue fighting, nods in understanding. I've fought in the arenas of Egypt during the flood season, when the air was thick as soup. But this feels different, heavier, as if the gods themselves pressed down upon the earth. The afternoon training proceeds with obvious difficulty. Men who can fight for hours in the blazing sun of the amphitheater find themselves gasping after mere minutes of practice. Sweat streams down bronze torsos despite minimal exertion, and the usual boisterous camaraderie gives way to a grim focus on simply enduring the oppressive conditions. As afternoon progresses toward evening, the signs that have troubled individual citizens throughout the day begin to multiply and intensify across Pompeii. What had seemed like isolated oddities now reveal themselves as symptoms of something vast and unprecedented stirring beneath their feet. In the Temple of Jupiter, Optimus Maximus, the afternoon priests maintain their sacred duties with growing unease. The eternal flames that burn before the altar of the King of Gods flicker with unusual intensity, consuming oil and incense far more rapidly than normal. Even the marble statues seem to gleam with an inner light that has nothing to do with the oil lamps that illuminate the sacred space. Chief priest Lucius Cornelius performs the traditional afternoon sacrifice with meticulous attention to ritual detail, but even he cannot ignore the way the sacrificial flames leap higher than normal, or how the sacred wine poured as libation appears to evaporate almost instantly on the altar stones. The gods seem unusually attentive today, he murmurs to his assistant, a young acolyte whose face shows the strain of maintaining composure in the suffocating air. Perhaps they require extra devotion to appease whatever divine mood grips them. The sacred geese kept in the temple courtyard have been calling continuously since dawn. In the young acolyte's 3 years of service, he has never seen them so agitated. Their behavior is considered a reliable indicator of divine moods and intentions, and today their distress echoes through the sacred precincts like a warning that needs no interpretation. Throughout the city, wells that have provided cool spring water for generations now run tepid, their usual refreshing quality dulled by the strange heat that seems to affect everything it touches. Public bath attendants report that their heating systems work with supernatural efficiency, requiring no additional fuel, yet producing water almost too hot to bear. Most disturbing of all, the ground itself provides increasingly clear warnings. Citizens walking the stone-paved streets notice warmth radiating through their sandal soles. Not the accumulated heat of sun-baked stone, but active thermal energy rising from underground sources. In some areas, the sensation grows strong enough to cause discomfort, forcing people to seek cooler paths through the city. The animals throughout the city display increasingly agitated behavior that transcends normal responses to heat. Horses refuse to settle in their stables, pacing and whinnying as if sensing predators in the darkness. Dogs gather in nervous packs, whining and looking toward Vesuvius with expressions that seem almost human in their anxiety. Even the city's numerous stray cats, usually so dignified and aloof, can be seen pressed against the coolest walls they can find, their usual hunting instincts subdued by some deeper survival imperative that warns of approaching danger. As evening approaches and the oppressive heat shows no signs of breaking, the citizens of Pompeii begin to understand that they face something beyond normal weather. But their ancient faith in Roman engineering and organization provides false comfort. Surely, whatever natural phenomenon they witness must have limits and logical responses. In just 8 hours, Mount Vesuvius will reveal the true scope of its power. But for now, as shadows begin to lengthen across the heated stones of the city, life continues with stubborn determination, despite the mounting evidence that this day will be unlike any other in Pompeii's long history. As evening approaches, though the oppressive heat shows no signs of breaking, families throughout Pompeii gather for their traditional cena with growing unease. The evening meal, normally a time of relaxation and social connection, unfolds against a backdrop of phenomena that resist all explanation. In the villa of wine merchant Marcus Appidius Sabinus, whose vineyards climb the lower slopes of Vesuvius itself, a small dinner party samples vintages that seem somehow transformed. The familiar wines, known throughout Campania for their perfect balance and complex flavors, now carry an underlying intensity that wasn't present just days before. "Remarkable," murmurs Lucius Vesonius Primus, the cloth merchant, setting down his cup with a puzzled expression. It tastes as if the wine itself has absorbed some essential power from the mountain, more alive somehow, more potent. In Marcus Lucretius Fronto's modest home, the baker's family shares simple but honest fare with growing concern. "The bread tastes different today," observes their neighbor Gaius Appidius Rufus, richer somehow, as if the very grain carried extra flavor. Perhaps this strange heat affects even the art of baking in ways we don't understand. Even the most basic household tasks reveal the day's strangeness. Kitchen fires burn with unusual intensity despite careful fuel management. Food that should require heating stays warm without additional cooking. Wells that have provided cool water for generations now offer liquid that provides no refreshment in the stifling air. Children throughout the city seem especially sensitive to the atmospheric changes, refusing foods they normally enjoy and clinging to their parents with unusual intensity. In the household of Lucius Caesius Secundus, young Gaius whispers repeatedly that the ground is singing beneath us, describing sounds that adults cannot hear, but somehow feel in their bones. The evening crowds in the forum move with the careful deliberation of those conserving energy for survival. Legal proceedings drag on longer than usual, as magistrates struggle to maintain concentration, and even the most routine commercial transactions proceed with obvious difficulty. Conversations in taverns and public spaces take on an increasingly worried tone. Merchants discuss the strange behavior of their goods, craftsmen share stories of impossible working conditions, and families whisper about children who refuse to sleep and animals that pace restlessly through the night. The fountains throughout the city, usually sources of cool relief, now flow with water that offers little comfort. Even the marble basins feel warm to the touch, as if the very stone has absorbed heat from some underground source. As full darkness settles over Pompeii, sleep proves as elusive as morning dew in the desert. Throughout the city, families lie awake in beds that seem to pulse with subtle vibrations, listening to sounds that challenge their understanding of their familiar world. Marcus Lucretius Fronto and his wife Livia huddle together on their simple wooden bed, hands clasped in the oppressive darkness. Their modest bedroom, usually a refuge of coolness once the sun disappears, retains heat like a pottery kiln, fired from within. "Do you feel that?" Livia whispers suddenly, her voice barely audible above the unusual symphony of the night. Restless animals, muffled voices from neighboring houses, the distant sound of citizens, unable to find peace in sleep. Marcus strains every sense to detect what has disturbed his wife's rest. Then he feels it too, the slightest tremor, as if some massive creature stirs in the depths beneath their home. Not the familiar vibration of heavy carts on stone streets, but something deeper, more profound, rising from the very bones of the earth itself. Throughout Pompeii, similar discoveries greet the darkness. In grand villas and humble apartments, citizens emerge from futile attempts at rest to find their homes radiating heat that has nothing to do with accumulated sunshine. The stone-paved streets feel warm through sandal soles, and even the marble fountains that normally provide cool relief now flow with water that offers no refreshment. In the villa of Lucius Caesius Secundus, the family gathers in their central courtyard, seeking not only cooler air, but the comfort of shared vigil. 3 generations, grandfather, father, and young son, represent the continuity of family tradition that has sustained their household through decades of prosperity. But tonight, that continuity feels fragile, threatened by forces beyond human understanding. "Tell me again about the old days, grandfather," requests young Lucius, his voice barely audible in the oppressive darkness. "About when you were a boy and the earth shook." The old man, now in his 70th year, settles back against cushions that provide little comfort in the stifling air. His memories reach back to the great earthquake of 62 AD, when much of Pompeii suffered severe damage and the very foundations of civilization seemed to tremble. "The ground began to dance like a living thing," he begins, his voice taking on the rhythmic cadence of oft-told tales. "Your great-grandmother gathered all the children and took us to open spaces, away from walls that might fall. She said the earth sometimes needs to stretch and yawn, like a great creature waking from sleep." "Were you frightened?" the boy asks. "Terrified," the old man admits without shame. "But your great-grandmother was brave enough for all of us. She said we must simply stay out of the earth's way until it settles down again." In houses throughout the Restless city, children experience dreams of unusual vividness and disturbing content. Young minds, perhaps more sensitive to subtle changes in their environment, create night visions that their parents dismiss as fevered fantasies brought on by the oppressive heat. Little Marcus, 6-year-old son of a pottery maker, awakens crying from a dream in which the mountain came alive and walked across the bay like a giant made of stone and fire. His mother soothes him with gentle words and cool water, but privately she wonders at the detail and intensity of his vision. 8-year-old Julia describes a dream where all the fountains in the city ran red as wine, and fish swam through the streets while birds fell from the sky like rain. Her nurse, a practical woman from the countryside, finds herself remembering childhood stories about prophetic dreams and the special sight that sometimes comes to the very young. Even the adults who manage brief periods of rest are troubled by dreams that seem to carry messages from realms beyond normal experience. Merchants dream of warehouses filled with ash instead of goods. Craftsmen see their workshops buried under rivers of glowing stone. Mothers dream of gathering their children for journeys to distant, unknown destinations. The night watch, making their rounds through streets lit by flickering torches and oil lamps, report sightings that challenge their understanding of the familiar cityscape. Marcus Apedius, captain of the night watch for the Forum district, pauses in his patrol to examine a section of street where several citizens have reported feeling unusual warmth. Kneeling on the stone paving, he presses his hand against the surface and jerks it back in surprise. The stones are definitely warm, not merely retaining heat from the day's sun, but actively radiating temperature from some source beneath. The sensation reminds him of standing near a bread oven, but these are solid stone blocks laid over compacted earth. "Send a runner to the Aediles," he instructs one of his men. "They need to know about this before morning, and double the watch on this section. If the street itself is becoming unstable, we need to keep citizens away." In the temple of Jupiter, Optimus Maximus, the night priests maintain their sacred vigil with growing unease. The eternal flames that burn before the altar of the King of Gods flicker with unusual intensity, casting shadows that dance across marble columns with almost frantic energy. Lucius Cornelius, the chief priest, kneels before the altar in traditional supplication, but his prayers take on an urgency that surprises even him. The familiar Latin phrases seem inadequate tonight, as if conventional forms of worship lack power to address whatever divine forces stir beyond the temple walls. Great Jupiter, Lord of the sky, Master of thunder and lightning, he whispers, if your divine will sends signs to your faithful servants, grant us wisdom to understand and strength to endure whatever trial approaches. The sacred geese kept in the temple courtyard call continuously since sunset. Their distress echoes through the sacred precincts like a warning that needs no interpretation. In a world where such creatures are believed to carry messages from the gods, their agitation cannot be dismissed as mere animal discomfort. Throughout the city, other temples report similar phenomena. In the shrine of Venus, the goddess of love and fertility, offerings of flowers wilt within minutes of being placed on the altar. At the temple of Apollo, the sacred flame gutters and flares unpredictably, despite the complete absence of any breeze to disturb it. The priests consult among themselves in hushed conferences, comparing observations and seeking patterns that might reveal divine intention. But the signs they witness resist easy interpretation, too subtle to demand immediate action, too persistent to ignore as natural phenomena. As the deepest hour of night approaches, that time when human spirits feel most vulnerable and the natural world seems closest to revealing its hidden secrets, Pompeii settles into an uneasy vigil that will prove to be civilization's last peaceful moments in this place. The restlessness that grips the city intensifies rather than diminishes as darkness deepens. Citizens who normally sleep soundly find themselves lying wide-eyed, listening to sounds that seem to come from everywhere and nowhere, a deep, rhythmic pulsing that might be imagination, but feels as real as their own heartbeats. Families gather in courtyards and gardens, seeking not only cooler air, but also the comfort of shared presence in the face of something vast and incomprehensible. Conversations proceed in whispers, as if speaking too loudly might attract attention from whatever immense power seems to hover just beyond perception. The night air hangs motionless over the harbor like a vast, invisible blanket. Ship sails droop lifeless as burial shrouds, and even torch flames burn straight up without the slightest flicker. The absence of any air movement makes the oppressive heat even more suffocating, creating an atmosphere that seems almost solid in its density. Throughout the sleeping city, those citizens sensitive to natural phenomena feel the earth itself beginning to stir with purpose. The mountain that has watched over their bay for longer than human memory reaches the final moments of its geological patience. Deep within its green slopes, pressures beyond imagination approach their moment of inevitable release. In the villa of the wealthy merchant Lucius Caecilius Jucundus, the master of the house stands on his balcony, gazing out over the city he has known all his life. The familiar landmarks, the amphitheater, the aqueduct, the red-tiled roofs that stretch in orderly rows toward the harbor, appear unchanged in the starlight. Yet something fundamental feels different, as if he views a beloved painting that some invisible hand has subtly altered. Mount Vesuvius rises in the distance, its familiar outline softened by night haze, but somehow more present. As if the great mass of stone and earth has awakened from some timeless slumber and now regards the human settlements scattered across its domain with new awareness. "Come inside, my love," calls his wife from the doorway. The air grows cooler, and you need your rest. Jucundus takes one last look at the mountain, at the city spread below, at the bay that glimmers faintly in the starlight. Tomorrow will bring new business opportunities, fresh challenges, the endless cycle of commerce and family life that defines a prosperous Roman's existence. He has no way of knowing that he has just taken his final look at the world as he has always known it, that in less than 8 hours, everything visible from this balcony will be transformed beyond recognition. The mountain that has blessed his family for generations is about to reclaim its ancient power with a violence that will reshape the very landscape. But for now, in these last peaceful hours, Pompeii rests in the contentment of a successful day's work completed. The evening meals have been shared, the day's business concluded, the gods properly honored. The citizens of this prosperous city prepare for sleep, confident that tomorrow will dawn much like today, that their comfortable routines will continue as they have for generations. The mountain keeps its secrets for a few hours more, but deep within its heart, pressures beyond imagination continue their inexorable build toward a release that will echo through history. The last peaceful night in Pompeii draws toward its close, and time grows short for this unsuspecting city and all who dwell within its walls. As the first pale light of dawn begins to creep across the eastern horizon, the citizens of Pompeii who have managed any rest at all begin to stir from troubled sleep. But this sunrise will be unlike any other in the long history of this prosperous Roman city. Marcus Lucretius Fronto rises before the first cock crows, his body aching from a night spent on a bed that trembled with every breath he took. Through his narrow window, Mount Vesuvius looms against the brightening sky, its peaceful green slopes giving no hint of the fury that builds within its ancient heart. At precisely the first hour after sunrise, as temple bells ring across the city to mark the beginning of what citizens believe will be another ordinary day, the ground beneath Pompeii gives its first unmistakable warning. Not the subtle tremor that has troubled sleepers throughout the night, but a distinct shake that rattles pottery on shelves and causes hanging oil lamps to sway on their chains. In the temple of Jupiter, Chief Priest Lucius Cornelius is conducting morning sacrifice when the sacred flame suddenly leaps higher, consuming incense in a flash of brilliant light. The marble altar itself vibrates with sympathetic energy, and the golden statue of the King of Gods shimmers as if viewed through waves of heat. Marcus is kneading dough for the morning's bread when the second tremor strikes, stronger than the first. The wooden table beneath his hands jumps like a living thing, and carefully measured ingredients scatter across the floor. From his ovens comes a roaring sound, as if the fires have found new fuel, though no wood has been added since yesterday evening. "Master!" calls his slave Gaius from the street outside. "Come quickly!" Something is wrong with the mountain. Marcus rushes from his bakery to join the growing crowd that has gathered in the Via del Abbondanza, all eyes turned toward Vesuvius. What they see defies immediate comprehension and will haunt human memory for millennia. From the mountain's peak, that peaceful summit that has shown nothing but green slopes and gentle contours for countless generations, rises a column of what appears to be dark smoke. But this is no ordinary cloud. It climbs straight up into the still air with supernatural speed and density, its edges sharply defined against the morning sky. As they watch in growing amazement and terror, the column spreads at its top like the crown of an enormous tree, creating a shape that will be described by witnesses as resembling a stone pine. But no earthly tree could grow with such terrifying speed or reach such impossible heights. Pliny the Elder will write that it looked like a pine tree, observes Apollodorus, the Greek physician, his weathered face grave with sudden understanding. But we who witness it know that no natural tree could climb the heavens with such malevolent purpose. The dark column towers above them like a pillar supporting the heavens themselves, its mushroom-shaped crown spreading to blot out increasing portions of the eastern sky. From its base comes a rumbling that they feel in their bones rather than hear with their ears, the voice of the mountain itself as it awakens from geological slumber. Throughout Pompeii, similar scenes of amazement and growing terror unfold as citizens emerge from their homes to witness the impossible spectacle. The rising column casts its shadow across the city, like the wing of some mythological bird, and the air begins to carry strange scents, sulfur and hot metal, as if the forges of Vulcan himself have been thrown open to the world. In the villa of Lucius Caesius Secundus, the family and their slaves gather in the central courtyard, faces upturned to witness the impossible spectacle unfolding above them. The rising column casts its shadow across their home like the wing of some mythological bird, and the air begins to carry strange scents, sulfur and hot metal. "Father," young Marcus asks, with the directness that only crisis can bring, "should we leave the city?" Lucius considers the question with all the rational deliberation that his education and experience can provide. They are Roman citizens, accustomed to organizing and controlling their environment through engineering and administration. Surely this phenomenon, however impressive, must have natural limits and logical responses. But even as his mind seeks familiar frameworks for understanding, his deeper instincts whisper warnings that transcend rational analysis. The column above them continues to grow with supernatural speed, and the rumbling from the mountain now seems to shake the very air they breathe. "Prepare the traveling chests," he tells his chief slave with carefully controlled calm. "Light baggage only, and have the horses readied for immediate departure. We will wait to see how this develops, but wisdom suggests preparation for various possibilities." At approximately the 6th hour, noon by Roman reckoning, Mount Vesuvius reveals the full scope of its fury. The dark column, now towering miles into the sky, begins to rain its contents down upon the lands below. Small stones start to fall like hail, followed by larger rocks that strike rooftops with sharp, terrifying impacts. The streets of Pompeii fill with citizens carrying whatever they can salvage, their faces turned upward in amazement and growing terror as the stone rain intensifies. Families emerge from homes carrying children and elderly relatives, their comfortable routines shattered by the realization that their familiar world is ending before their eyes. Marcus makes his decision as a piece of volcanic stone, the size of a man's fist, crashes through his bakery roof. "We leave now," he tells Livia, grabbing only their small savings and a water jug. The city is no longer safe for any living thing. They join the streams of refugees, flowing through the gates of Pompeii, looking back only once at the home that has sheltered their family for 3 generations. The mountain that had seemed so benevolent just hours before now looms over them like an avenging god, its crown of ash and fire spreading across the sky like the wings of divine judgment. But for many, realization comes too late. The stone rain intensifies with each passing hour, making travel increasingly dangerous. Roofs collapse under the weight of accumulated volcanic debris. Streets become impassable rivers of hot rock. The air itself begins to burn with sulfurous gases that sear the lungs. In his villa, Lucius Caesius Secundus makes a final attempt to save his family's treasures, sending slaves to gather precious objects while he leads his wife and son toward the stables. But the intensity of falling stones forces them to take shelter in an interior room, where they huddle together as their magnificent home is slowly buried under the mountain's inexorable gift. Young Gaius, no longer the carefree child of just hours before, clings to his mother while volcanic stones pound the roof above them. "The mountain was just sleeping, wasn't it, Papa?" he whispers. "And now it's awake and very, very angry." As the day progresses and the stone rain shows no signs of abating, Pompeii begins its transformation from thriving city to geological artifact. Streets that had echoed with sounds of commerce and conversation fall silent except for the relentless percussion of falling rock. Gardens that had bloomed with carefully tended flowers disappear beneath gray blankets of volcanic debris. The harbor becomes a bay filled with floating pumice so thick that vessels cannot navigate. The amphitheater, where gladiators had fought for cheering crowds, slowly fills with stones that will preserve its shape for future archaeologists to discover. Some citizens managed to escape in the early hours of the eruption, fleeing north toward Nola or south toward Stabii, in desperate attempts to outrun the mountain's wrath. Marcus and Livia are among these fortunate few, their early decision to flee saving their lives while so many others hesitate too long. But many remain, particularly the elderly and those with extensive property to protect. They huddle in the strongest buildings they can find, sharing what food and water they have while the world dissolves around them. Parents comfort children with stories and songs, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy even as volcanic stones crash through their roofs. The night brings no relief. The mountain's fury continues unabated, and the air grows increasingly thick with ash and poisonous gases. Those who have survived the stone rain now face an even deadlier enemy as the volcanic cloud begins to descend, bringing with it temperatures that no human being can endure. But from this catastrophe comes history's greatest gift. Beneath the gray shroud that falls like deadly snow, Pompeii will sleep in perfect preservation, waiting 17 centuries for archaeologists to rediscover its silent testimony. When they finally uncover the city, they will find bread still in ovens, paintings fresh on walls, families huddled together in their final moments. They will discover that human love transcends even volcanic fury, that beauty persists beyond destruction, that courage to face the impossible lives on in stone and ash. Marcus Lucretius Fronto, among the fortunate few who escaped, pauses on a distant hilltop for one final look at his birthplace. Pompeii has vanished beneath a gray shroud that continues to thicken. Where once a thriving city bustled with 20,000 souls, now only silence remains, a silence that will endure for nearly 17 centuries. The mountain has reclaimed its domain with thoroughness that defies human comprehension. In less than 24 hours, an entire civilization has been erased from the living world, yet preserved forever in volcanic ash. And so, dear listener, we reach the end of our journey through time. As you drift toward peaceful sleep, remember the people of Pompeii, not for how they died, but for how they lived. Remember their generosity to neighbors, their devotion to family, their appreciation for simple pleasures like warm bread and cool wine. Remember that they faced their ultimate trial with dignity and courage, and that their story lives on to inspire us across the centuries. The mountain sleeps again now, as do the people of Pompeii. In that eternal rest, they have found a kind of immortality that no Roman triumph could have provided. Sweet dreams, fellow traveler through time. May your rest be peaceful and your awakening gentle, surrounded by the love and safety that the people of Pompeii treasured in their final hours. And may you carry their memory as a reminder to cherish each ordinary day, for we never know when our familiar world might change forever. The story of Pompeii ends here, but the human story continues in every act of kindness, every moment of beauty, every expression of love that refuses to be extinguished by time or catastrophe. If this journey through ancient history has brought you comfort or helped ease your transition to sleep, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe for more peaceful adventures through time. Next week, we'll explore the secret life of Viking women, discovering the hidden stories of Norse society that Hollywood never tells. Until then, sleep peacefully and remember that every day is a gift to be treasured. Good night, and sweet dreams of ancient streets filled with laughter, of families gathered around humble tables, of a city that lives forever in history's tender care.